The small café smelled of roasted beans and fresh pastries. Rain drizzled outside, painting the window with soft streaks. At the corner table sat Daniel Carter, a man in his late 30s with sharp features, dressed in a tailored suit that couldn't quite hide the loneliness in his eyes. He was a widower, though the world only knew him as the city's elusive CEO millionaire. Today, he wasn't thinking about business, he was just sipping coffee, staring at nothing, remembering the wife he had lost 2 years ago. That's when he heard a tiny, fragile voice. "Can I sit here?" He turned, startled. Standing before him was a little girl no older than 7. Her skin was pale, her eyes tired, but they held a spark of courage. She clutched a worn-out teddy bear in one hand and a small medical mask dangled from her wrist. Daniel frowned. "Where's your mother?" he asked gently. The girl shook her head. "She's outside talking to the doctor. I just didn't want to sit alone." For the first time in months, Daniel felt something shift inside his chest. Daniel gestured to the empty chair. "Of course," he said softly. The girl climbed up, her little legs swinging as she placed the teddy bear carefully on her lap. She wrapped both hands around the warm cup of cocoa the waiter had given her earlier and blew gently at the steam. "What's your name?" Daniel asked. "Lila," she replied, smiling faintly. "My mom says I'm strong like my teddy, but sometimes I don't feel strong at all." She lowered her voice, as if it were a secret. "I get tired really fast because of my sickness." Daniel's throat tightened. He knew illness, he knew loss, and something about the honesty in her words cut straight through the wall he had built around himself. He cleared his throat. "Well, Lila, I think strong people aren't the ones who never get tired. They're the ones who keep smiling even when they do." Lila's eyes lit up, and for the first time in years, Daniel felt his own lips curve into a real smile. Minutes passed like hours as they talked. Lila asked Daniel about his favorite colors, foods, and whether he had children. He hesitated at that last question, his gaze drifting to the raindrops outside. "I had a family," he said quietly. "But my wife, she's in heaven now." Lila blinked, hugging her teddy closer. "Then you're a little bit like me," she whispered. "Because I don't know if I'll get to stay here long. The doctors say my heart is very tired." The words struck Daniel like a blow. He studied her tiny frame, the way her fingers clung to the bear as if it held her to the earth. Something inside him broke open, an ache he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. "You're very brave to talk about it," he said, forcing steadiness in his voice. Lila smiled weakly. "Maybe. But it's easier when someone listens." Daniel realized then, it wasn't just she who needed company. He did too. The door opened, and a woman in her mid-30s stepped in, carrying an umbrella dripping with rain. She spotted Lila immediately and hurried over. Her face was worn with worry but softened when she saw her daughter smiling. "Lila, sweetheart, I told you to wait for me," she began, but stopped when she noticed Daniel. Recognition flickered in her eyes. She knew who he was, everyone in the city did. "I hope she wasn't bothering you, Mr. Carter," the woman said quickly, embarrassed. Daniel shook his head. "Not at all. We were just talking." The woman exhaled, setting a gentle hand on Lila's shoulder. "I'm Claire," she introduced herself. Her mother. Claire's eyes held exhaustion, the kind that came from endless hospital visits and sleepless nights, yet there was also fierce love burning in them. Daniel stood, offering his hand. "I'm glad she sat with me." Claire glanced at her daughter, then back at him. Something unspoken passed between them, an understanding forged not by status, but by shared pain and responsibility. Claire sat with them for a while, sipping tea while Lila chatted happily. Daniel found himself asking about hospital visits, medications, and how Claire managed everything alone. "It's not easy," Claire admitted, her fingers tightening around her cup. "But Lila's my world. Every smile she gives me is worth the fight." Daniel watched her, noticing the shadows under her eyes, the quiet strength in her posture. He had met countless business partners, politicians, and wealthy families, but none had struck him the way this woman did, with raw resilience. When Lila excused herself to use the restroom, Daniel leaned closer. "Claire, forgive me if this sounds forward, but is there anything I can do to help?" Her lips parted in surprise. "You've already helped," she said softly, glancing at Lila's empty chair. "I haven't seen her talk to someone like that in months." Daniel followed her gaze, his chest tightening with a mix of sorrow and hope. For the first time in years, he wondered if fate had brought him here not just to remember his past, but to rewrite his future. The cafe began to empty as the rain eased, but Daniel didn't want the conversation to end. Something about this little family drew him in, a fragile bond that somehow steadied his own broken heart. Lila returned, sliding into her seat with her teddy bear. "Mom, can Mr. Daniel come with us to the hospital tomorrow? He tells good stories." Claire chuckled nervously. "Sweetheart, he's a very busy man." Daniel surprised them both. "Actually, I'd love to." Claire blinked. You would." "Yes," Daniel said firmly. "I want to be there." Lila's face lit up, and in that glow Daniel felt something stirring, a sense of purpose he thought he had lost forever. The next day, Daniel found himself walking through the white halls of the children's hospital. He had faced boardrooms full of investors, but never had he felt so nervous. Lila held his hand as they passed the rows of patients. "Don't be scared," she whispered. "The doctors are nice. They just talk a lot." Claire glanced at Daniel, surprised at how natural it looked, her daughter walking hand in hand with the city's most powerful man. He wasn't acting like a CEO now. He was simply human. When the doctor explained Lila's condition, her weak heart, the need for ongoing treatment, and the staggering costs, Daniel felt his chest tighten. Claire nodded quietly, her face calm, though Daniel noticed her hands tremble as she signed the papers. That night, he couldn't sleep. He kept seeing Lila's smile. He kept hearing Claire's tired voice. And he knew he couldn't just walk away. The following week, Daniel met Claire outside the hospital. She looked worn, her shoulders heavy with burdens. "Claire," he said carefully, "I want to cover Lila's medical expenses." "All of them." Her eyes widened, shaking her head immediately. "Mr. Carter, no. I can't accept that. We'll manage." Daniel stepped closer. "This isn't charity. It's something I need to do. For her. For you. Please, let me." Claire's lips trembled, but before she could respond, Lila appeared, skipping toward them with her teddy in hand. "Mommy, guess what? The nurse said I was brave today." Claire swallowed hard, brushing a tear quickly before her daughter could see. She looked back at Daniel, her defenses cracking. "Why?" she whispered. "Why us?" Daniel's answer was simple. "Because you remind me what family feels like." Weeks turned into months. Daniel was no longer just a visitor, he became part of their routine. He sat beside Lila during treatments, read her bedtime stories in the hospital room, and sometimes even cooked simple meals for Claire when she was too tired to stand. One evening, after Lila had fallen asleep, Claire found Daniel sitting quietly by the window. The city lights reflected in his eyes, but his expression was softer than she had ever seen. "You've done so much," she said. "I don't know how to thank you." Daniel turned toward her. "You already have. You let me feel alive again." Silence hung between them, thick with unspoken emotions. Claire's hand brushed his briefly as she reached for the blanket to cover Lila. That small touch was enough to send warmth through him. For the first time since his wife's death, Daniel allowed himself to imagine a tomorrow that wasn't empty. Spring arrived with blossoms outside the hospital garden. Lila, stronger now, walked slowly between her mother and Daniel, clutching both their hands. "Do you think," she asked, "that families can be made from people who weren't always together?" Claire's eyes filled with tears. "Yes, sweetheart. Families are made from love." Daniel squeezed Lila's hand. "And sometimes love finds us in the most unexpected places." They sat on a bench beneath a blooming tree. Lila leaned against her mother, her teddy tucked under her arm, while Daniel sat close beside them. For once, the future didn't seem so uncertain. He wasn't just a widowed CEO anymore. He was a man who had found a reason to live again, through a brave little girl and her mother. And as the sun broke through the clouds, Daniel knew one truth above all. Sometimes, a stranger's question, "Can I sit here?" can change an entire life.